Good day. I'm Gerald Goldfarb, your host, and this is the television program Inside Law. On this program, we try to give the viewer an inside and realistic picture about how the legal system works. Many of you have seen kind of fictionalized views of the legal system in various television programs, such as LA Law. But on Inside Law, we try to give you realism. I'm very happy to have here as my guest an eminent trial lawyer in Los Angeles County, Larry R. Feldman. Good day, Larry.
Good day, Gerald.
Larry is the president of the Los Angeles County Bar Association, has been a member of the bar in California for more than 20 years, graduated from Loyola Law School, was president of the Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Association, and is really knowledgeable and experienced about the LA County Bar Association and about the legal system in California as a whole. Maybe by way of beginning, Larry, you could give us an idea what actually is the LA County Bar Association.
Well, the LA County Bar is the largest bar association in the world. It is a voluntary bar association made up of approximately 22,000 lawyers, primarily from Los Angeles County, who join this association for a variety of reasons, some of which is for continuing education, others is for doing public service for public good, others are for membership benefits such as insurance or discounts on certain things. And it's a collegial group of lawyers who try to better the system.
Now, not all the lawyers in Los Angeles County are members, are they?
No, about 50% of the lawyers in LA County belong.
I see. And how is the organization financed?
By dues, primarily.
What are the dues?
That depends. It can run from $90 to $150, depending on where you are as far as how many years you've practiced.
Mm-hmm. And what's the difference between the LA County Bar Association and the State Bar of California?
Well, the State Bar of California is a group of, everybody has to belong. It's mandatory. It's a licensing agency. You cannot practice law in the state of California unless you belong to the State Bar. And it primarily deals with issues of discipline and admission to the bar.
I see. Now, I'd like to give the public some kind of an idea of a general overview of the kinds of services that are performed, both for the benefit of the public and for the benefit of lawyers, that the LA County Bar Association does. Maybe we can run through a few of those.
Well, let me maybe start by talking about what it does for the public.
Okay.
We have a lot of what we call pro bono projects. We have done programs for immigration, for the homeless, programs for AIDS victims where we provide legal services. The earthquake that just occurred several months ago, we set up free legal advice for the people who were affected by the earthquake. We have an LRS, which is a lawyer referral service, the largest in the country, where people who cannot get lawyers can come to us and we match the person's problem with panels of qualified lawyers.
Now, such persons who wanted to use the legal referral service, they could call the State Bar number, which I think is 627-2727, and then they would be directed to someone who would help them get a lawyer.
That's correct. They would be told who to see, and that person would be a specialist in their area. Mm-hmm. We do arbitration, so that if a client has a problem with a lawyer, we are set up and geared to try to solve that problem for the client.
We can stop there for a minute, because I think sometimes clients don't realize that they have some a remedy if they're having a problem. That's basically if they have a fee problem with the lawyer?
Yes, and the clients, rather than having to go out and hire another lawyer to resolve this fee dispute, can come to the county bar and through the arbitration process resolve that dispute with a lawyer, and the lawyer has to go.
I mean, the lawyer can't just sue the layperson for the fee. They can sue them, but then the layperson has the right to take the matter out of the law courts and into arbitration.
Exactly.
That seems like a fair system. Any other things on that side?
Well, we are really set up to try to help people with moderate and low incomes. We donate something like $250,000 a year to various projects that support these kinds of things in the domestic field. As I said, in the immigration field, we have what we call public counsel. That is really $1 million budget almost per year that does these pro bono things for the public's good, where we staff it with lawyers and raise money for it.
So if you're a poor person with a legal problem, there are a lot of resources in the community, aren't there, of the kind that you're talking about, where you can get some legal help?
That is right. I mean, and for instance, legal aid, which we help sponsor and we donate money to, is a place to go. Public counsel is another place to go.
We had the director, Michael Fewer, was here a couple of weeks ago. He's the director of Betzetic Legal Services. That's another group that the county bar funds or helps fund.
Harriet Bruja is another one where we give money to, which is a domestic agency. So we do support various agencies that do this. Constitutional Rights Foundation, which is a foundation that is set up to deal with young people, to keep young people from going into crime and getting off on the wrong foot, to try to teach them how important the law is and rules of law. We are a co-sponsor of that program and give money to that program.
And how about for the lawyers themselves, who are the dues-paying members? What sort of services does the county bar offer to them?
I think that the primary service we offer to them is education in the true sense. I mean, most lawyers join the county bar. We did a survey a couple of years ago and found that most lawyers join the county bar because they want the continuing legal education that we offer. We offer programs from soup to nuts on every subject really that lawyers are involved in. And most lawyers do want to educate themselves and continue in the manner in which they are right from law school, where they come out with all this information.
I mean, the law is changes so very rapidly that you really have to have continuing education if you want to do a job as a lawyer.
You really do, and it's changing every day, and there's no way to keep up with it, and the good lawyers will continue to educate themselves, just like good doctors do. So that's one. Also, what we offer are various membership benefits. By joining our association, lawyers can get a discount, for instance, on malpractice insurance, which is a major issue facing the bar today. Discounts on various legal services like messengers and things of that nature. We're going to ultimately give discounts for court reporters and things of that nature, where lawyers have a reason to join the bar. Others do it because they want the social aspects of it, and others do it because they want a place to deliver free services to the public, that they're interested in that.
And I guess you also lobby in Sacramento and with other organizations for lawyers' interests.
We do, and hopefully those interests are the same as the public's. In most cases, I think they are, but we do on issues that affect the profession, do lobby, and do make our views known.
And I know that you also have a program of drug or alcohol counseling for lawyers who have problems in that area. Has that been a growing phenomenon in recent years?
It really has. We have found that the real bad lawyers, the lawyers that are continually committing malpractice or not returning calls habitually, if you dig deep enough, you can sometimes find an alcohol or substance abuse problem. And we have set up a system to encourage lawyers to come for this type of counseling so that we can solve their problems before they occur.
Well, that sounds sounds real worthwhile and necessary in this day and age. I'd like to move on now, Larry, to talk about a few specific kind of hot issues in the legal profession I think that the public is concerned about. And one right at the top of my list, I know, I think a couple months ago it was, that the LA County Bar actually filed a lawsuit suing the LA County Board of Supervisors and the LA Superior Court and various other institutions about the problem of court congestion. And I think some people were a little confused and felt like lawyers suing the courts was a peculiar kind of thing. Could you enlighten us a little on that?
Well, Gerald, it really was a peculiar kind of thing. It was the first time in the history of any bar association that anyone ever sued the judges for court congestion. But we also, as you point out, sued the governor and the legislature and the Board of Supervisors. What we tried to do was sue everyone who was involved in the process. And what has happened is, over the years, since the criminal system constitutionally is entitled right now to preference or priority over the civil system, when the legislature and the governor and the Board of Supervisors doesn't respond to the amount of business in the court system, the criminal system just drains off the civil judges into that system, and that the people who are the law-abiding citizens just can't get to court. The innocent victims of someone's wrong cannot get themselves to court today. It takes over 5 years. And every study shows that the LA Superior Court is 120 some odd judges short of where they should be, just to keep pace. In other words, if you said it was okay to accept 5 years for delay, we would need 120 new judges just to keep pace.
How many judges in the LA Superior Court now?
There's 224 judges in the LA Superior Court.
So you're talking about an increase of more than 50% just to sort of maintain?
Just to maintain what I can claim, and I think that most lawyers do, and I think the media does now, is too long to get justice. I think people get frustrated when they have to wait 5 years to get to court, and it costs them too much. Even the winners become losers because it costs so much to get through 5 years of litigation.
What troubles me, Larry, is this. Is just more judges, more courtrooms the proper solution to this? Isn't there a way to make the system work in a faster and more efficient manner? Particularly, I'm reminded of the fact that what you say is quite true in the superior courts, but in the United States District Court, the federal court system, it only takes about 2 years to get to trial. So I'm skeptical, and I think some lay people are too, that more judges is the way to go.
Well, the difference between the federal system and the state system is that in the federal system, each judge has like 300 cases. In the state system, if you were to do that, the state judges would have 3 times as much cases. That's number one. Number two, it is true that reforms are necessary in various areas, and we have done this over 10 or 15 years, have tried to institute different reforms, and everybody has their own reform that they think will help.
But it's hard to get all the lawyers to agree on any particular reform.
The lawyers or the politicians. But the truth of the matter is that none of those reforms, whatever anyone has conceived of to date, from eliminating voir dire to doing away with this to speeding up that, will have any impact, any real impact on the system, because there's just too much business. I think the telling statistic is this, Gerald, and this is something that your viewers may be able to relate to. If we took 100 judges right now and they did nothing but deal with the backlog in civil cases only, it would take them 4 years of doing nothing but that to get rid of the backlog. So when crime goes up 15%, when you add 15% more police officers, when you see those statistics really impact the system. Or when a district attorney decides it's time to bust drug users, to bust prostitutes, when they try these different things, that floods the system with more criminal work. And the civil system just is the loser.
And the civil system, we're not talking just about the corporations suing corporations. We're talking about the ordinary person who perhaps was injured in an accident or any number of problems.
What you're talking about is this, that I believe that the accused deserve their day in court, and they deserve their day in court in a speedy manner. But there is something wrong with a system that says that the drunk driver who runs a stop sign and kills the breadwinner of a family, that the drunk driver gets to trial in 60 days, but the widow who's left with 5 kids because the breadwinner of the family was killed by this drunk driver has to wait over 5 years to get redress. There is something wrong with a system that allows those two things to occur. The victim, we need to put money into the system so that the victim gets to court in a reasonable period of time.
Well, I hope the LA County Bar wins its lawsuit and wins it in a lot less than 5 years so we can get some more judges into the civil side of the system. Another problem that I think the LA County Bar is really interested in these days is the problem of malpractice insurance. There's legal malpractice insurance. This has been a hot issue, I know, among lawyers for the last few years. There have been many more lawsuits in which lawyers have been accused of legal malpractice. The malpractice insurance premiums have gone up quite a bit. My own premium, I think, went up from maybe $1,000 a year to over $3,500 a year in the last couple of years, and I have a clean record. And I know a lot of lawyers nowadays are going bare. That is to say, they don't have any legal malpractice at all, which means that their clients are not very well protected. If they make a mistake, their client may really suffer from it. And I'm wondering what the position is of the county bar on this problem.
Well, we recognize it's a problem. We also recognize that there are no free bus rides anymore. You have to pay for what you get. And when you say that you used to pay $800 to $1,000 for insurance, that's true. But today, the claims experience is so bad that the premiums have gone up. We have looked at the problem to try to think about how can we help the public and how can we help the lawyers at the same time. And what we are trying to work on is to set up maybe another non-profit insurance company to take all the profit out, set up and run by lawyers, so that we can keep the premiums down. But we think that lawyers ought to have the option as to what kind of insurance they want. For instance, someone like myself, who, let's say, the premium's $3,500, could buy for $3,500 a policy that provides $2 million of coverage, but take a big deductible for $50,000. Another person may want first dollar coverage and for $3,500 only gets $100,000 worth of coverage but has no deductible. So really I think lawyers ought to be able to structure their own insurance. And I think that we have to discipline lawyers and take their licenses away if they decide they don't want to have insurance and they won't pay valid judgments. In other words, if they commit malpractice or do something wrong and they're sued by a client and they've had their day in court and they have lost, they should be required to satisfy those judgments, either by their personal assets or by their insurance, and if they don't, I think we have to take them out of the system.
I see. Well, that would be a strong incentive. If that were the rule, lawyers would really feel obliged to have malpractice insurance, and I personally feel like that's kind of necessary in this system. It's too easy for lawyers to make bad mistakes and have their clients suffer for it. And a related problem, I think, that we need to talk about is the situation, the State Bar's position or State Bar's work on attorney discipline and what the county bar views are on that subject. Particularly, I'm interested, again, it has to do with money and money out of lawyers' pockets. The State Bar wants to raise the dues for lawyers from over $200 up to about $470. That's about an 80% increase, I think. And they say that most of that money is going to go to lawyer discipline. And maybe lawyer discipline is needed. I understand there's a 2,000 case backlog of lawyers who've been charged with misconduct and the discipline has not been adjudicated. Do you think that kind of a big increase in dues is appropriate?
Well, we're studying it because we are concerned about this whole discipline problem. We are somewhat skeptical about the State Bar and how it runs programs. It has traditionally spent a lot more money than it needs to spend and doesn't seem to get as much sock for the buck as they should get. So we are studying this issue. And we are looking at other ways to perhaps raise the money for the discipline, because there is no question the county bar supports the concept, and I think most lawyers do, that bad lawyers ought to be disciplined and they ought to and it ought to happen in a reasonable time.
And in fact, lawyers are being disciplined with much more regularity than was the case 5 or 10 years ago. Isn't that true?
That's very true. And lawyers, our system, and it's not free from criticism, but our system of disciplining lawyers is by far, of all the professions in this state, the best. I mean, doctors never get disciplined.
That's right.
Accountants never get disciplined. Contractors never get disciplined. And you can go through the various professions. Lawyers truly get disciplined. We have a backlog of 1,800 cases, but the backlog's defined as cases that have been longer than 6 months, so it's not that significant. I'd like to see us think about penalizing with money sanctions the lawyers that do get disciplined. In other words, why shouldn't we take some money out of the lawyer's coffers who gets disciplined? Let him pay or she pay for the system rather than making all the lawyers who cannot afford these kinds of increases pay for it. But it's a serious problem, and as I think you know, this is just for the first time a week or so ago been raised, this issue of raising dues almost 80%, as you say. And we got to look at it and make sure that they're spending the money in the right areas and it's really going to do something.
I think these are related issues, Larry. You know, when you think about increased malpractice insurance premiums, increased dues, it's just the message here is the lawyers have to pay more of the freight for the system.
But the consumer ultimately does. See, our clients, lawyers are going to pass it on. When doctors were required to pay these enormous premiums for malpractice back in the mid-70s, the patient is the one that winds up paying it. And the same thing will ultimately happen to the legal profession. They're going to pass these costs through. And so when we take the raises in these things, we have to be careful. We have to make sure that we're not preventing then people from getting legal services, because the poor and the middle-income people have a great difficulty affording a lawyer today. And there are lawyers out there. You and I just looked at some numbers that showed that some 32% of the full-time lawyers are making less than $40,000. Now, when you take malpractice insurance and raise them from $500 to $4,000, and you take state bar dues and raise them to $300, that has a major impact on that lawyer.
And you're going to force these lawyers who are dealing with the middle class and lower class or lower economic class people, you're going to force them out of the profession, aren't you? Or force them to raise their prices in some way.
That's what you're going to really, whether you force them out of the profession, maybe you do, and I suspect some of your viewers may say wonderful, but really what's more important is that person who's working for $30, $40, $50 an hour will now have to charge $60 an hour, and the poor person on the street who can barely scrape up their money to afford this lawyer is now not going to have a lawyer.
Larry, our time is beginning to run short. I'd like to ask you kind of a concluding question, which would be sort of an overview of what's happening with the legal profession. When I was a young man deciding to come into the legal profession, it seemed like a wonderful, highly honorable place, and I would be very much respected by everyone in the community. Now the lawyers have a little bit of a questionable reputation in recent years, and I'm wondering what the county bar and what you yourself think about that phenomenon.
It doesn't surprise me. I still believe that this is an honorable profession. And that the substantial, overwhelming majority of lawyers are honorable people. I think that the public has a misconception of our system. Primarily, I think that's because what the public, which goes through litigation, is very frustrated. Half the people lose when they go through litigation, so those half that lose are not very happy. Of the 50% of the winners, it takes a long time to get there, so they get frustrated, and you now have a greater proportion of the people frustrated. of those that are left that might be happy, a good portion of them, they don't get everything they want. And even those that get everything they want have to pay a lawyer to get it, so they never are made totally whole. And so you have a few people left, and those few people, either the lawyer didn't call them enough or something, the secretary was rude to them. And so when you get through this whole process, you really wind up with just a very few people that are satisfied. The rest have a bad taste in their mouth. And even when, if you're a defendant and you get sued, the fact that you win doesn't give you a lot of, satisfaction because you had to pay a lawyer to win. And so we have to recognize that. And as a result of that, what we have to do as lawyers is communicate with our client. We can't run up the bills. We can't fight about where a deposition's going to be taken. We can't fight about what time we're going to show up at this deposition, whose office, whether. I've never won a case, and I've won more than my share of cases, by refusing a lawyer's request for an extension of time. And when we fight about those kinds of things, and I think that's what we're doing now, we run up the bills to our clients, we get no place, and we frustrate the process more. And I think at law schools, in law offices, and in the courts, we have to rededicate ourselves to be professionals.
Well, I think that's quite right. And I think the law schools is really where the matter has to start. It seems to me there's some deficiency in the teaching of legal ethics in the law schools. You think that's right?
I think that these law students are coming out as businessmen, not as lawyers. You mentioned 20 years ago when you came out, and I came out thinking that this was this great profession. I was proud to be a lawyer, and I still am. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And I think that the law schools have to rededicate themselves. But I think that the law firms have to help. I think that these big law firms have to realize that this is a profession, and it isn't just billable hours. And they have to dedicate themselves to teach these young lawyers that this is a profession.
Larry, I think you're absolutely right. And I want to say that I appreciate your being on the show today. I think you've given a good message to the public about the LA County Bar Association and how lawyers are really working hard to do their jobs as kinds of deacons in our society who are looking to help others as well as earn a reasonable profit for their work. And I want to thank you for being on the show and for telling us about the LA County Bar Association. This has been Inside Law. I'm your host, Gerald Goldfarb. Thank you very much for being with us today, and good day.
We went 30 minutes.
For further information, please call Inside Law at area code 213-285-8599.